I really love playing with characters that are just like a little bit more spunkier and like sassier than me because I'm kind of quiet spoken in real life. So it's fun to like explore that. When you're working with a publisher, you have to be able to have that back and forth with your editor as well and be able to show them like your full story instead of being like, well, it's in my head.
Let's dive in. And I guess the first
Okay.
thing, Shauna, is just the question that I asked you in the email, which is how is working on a licensed book different than working on your own original work?
Well, there's just a lot of extra steps to go through. So, Babysitter Little Sister isn't like my first licensed work since I have done some work for IDW's My Little Pony comic series. And that was interesting because, like, while I had to keep in mind the characters that they have established, I could also come up with new ideas for the stories. But with Babysitter Little Sister, you're adapting the novel into a graphic novel, so I wanted to keep the story basically the same. And I think for my books, it was pretty easy to like, I didn't really have to cut anything out. I also like when drawing it, I have to think about, okay, so when I structure these pages, I need to make sure that the feel is similar to what was established in the series. And then when I'm drawing it, I have to make sure the characters like they're close to what they looked like already in the earlier books because the book I just did is book 10 in the series. So at this point, there's been like two other artists that have worked on Babysitter Little Sister. So I'm like the third one here. And so I need to make sure especially following Katie Farinas, who started the series, you were really going off. It needs to look like Katie's work. It's like it's fun, it's challenging, it's very challenging. But
Mhm.
yeah, once you see everything together like on the shelves, it's like, okay, I think it feels babysittery.
All right, so walk me through your creative process for this particular project. Since of course, you had to start with the original Babysitters Club novel.
Yes. Yes. So Scholastic sends me the novel that they're wanting adapted. And this one is called Karen's Prize, which is really, really fun because Karen is going through she's attending spelling bees. So she's really, really good at it. And she starts to advance, she wins her school spelling bee, her class spelling bee, and she's trying to get to win the whole state of Connecticut, their junior spelling bee, and she gets kind of a big head about it. She's like just really like, I am so smart and amazing. And so it's kind of fun to see. I really love playing with characters that are just like a little bit more like spunkier and like sassier than me because I'm kind of quiet spoken in real life. So it's fun to like explore that and see like the challenges that Karen goes through with her friends, being like, I don't like how you're treating us right now. So the process was I had to read the book, and then from there, I had to work on a script. And that one is really interesting because I feel like with each project that I do, the way that I script it is always different.
Mhm.
Like when I do comics for myself, I might start with a script and then like halfway through, I'm like, I'm over this, and I'll just like dive into like thumbnails and stuff. And with my earlier series, Mimi, I just was able to go straight from a full outline into thumbnails because it was very short. But when you're adapting a license, especially from like a book, and you want to make sure that it's very similar to the original book, you need to have everything planned out so the editor can see it, and also so that the original author and her team can see it and approve of everything. So after reading it, I kind of just went back through and I would just kind of like break things into scenes and then just try to visualize it in my head. Like, okay, so in this scene, it's like the beginning. Karen's coming into class with her friends and talking about how they're the Three Musketeers. Like, how can I break that into like a page? And if I break it down into a page, like, how many panels is it going to take me? And where do I think like the emotion of that page is going to be, if I need to like take a little longer and do like a bigger panel so that the readers can stay there longer and see like how excited Karen is about the spelling bee and everything. And so once I break everything up and I see like how many pages I'm working with, so Karen's prize is about like 140 pages, I believe. And I broke it down into 10 chapters since that is kind of like what's been consistent with everything. From there, once it's approved, I go into thumbnails. And what's nice about actually having like a full script broken into like panels and pages is that it makes it easier for me to thumbnail because I'm like, okay, I have like my full plan. And also like I've done work with writers who've written scripts for me to work off of.
Mhm.
And while it's really fun working with a writer, sometimes being like the artist, like I know already visually like what's going to match up with how I like to do my comic pages.
Mhm.
So I don't have to go and be like, actually, there's a little bit too much on this page. It's like, okay, I know it's just the right amount on this page because I made it and I know how I do my pages. But what can change is like maybe I wrote like, oh, we're gonna have like this big audience in this panel and blah blah blah. And then once I get to like thumbnailing it, it's like, like this is kind of like maybe a little too busy, or maybe it's a lot, or I'm just kind of like, I think this is gonna like trip me up a little bit too much when I get to pencils. So I might tweak how it looks there. That can come into play later once I'm actually like penciling everything. So once I have the thumbs done, I have to send that to the editor and they have to approve of it, and they'll make like suggestions. Like I think for me, most of it comes down to just like the lettering.
Mhm.
I'm used to doing that last, but since there's a lot of back and forth with this series, because it has to be, you want everything to look the same as the other books, and so it's
Mhm.
easier to get that out of the way first. So most of the edits tends to be with that, with some being like with the visuals, like, changing a scene or just notes to make sure, like, okay, like make sure you make this character look a bit more like that, because, depending on how somebody does their thumbnails, they could be very, very loose or very, very tight. For me, I'm a bit more on the loose side. So once I get into doing my pencils after my thumbnails are approved, most of the time I follow like what I thumbnailed. But sometimes since they're loose, I'm just like, okay, this is basically what I want the composition to look like and what I want the feel of what's happening here. But as I'm drawing it, I'm like, this kind of composition isn't quite working for me. So I'm gonna like just change it a bit as long as it's still like the same kind of scene that was in the thumbnails. Like it's not like a big problem to,
Mhm.
make changes like that. And then, I just draw the whole book and, make sure everything with the lettering is still correct. Just finding like typos and everything. There's always typos.
Mhm.
No matter how many times you go through, you still find another one.
Mhm.
Um, and then, some of the art I might have to tweak and stuff because, again, it's like doing a licensed work, especially something where another artist has already
Mhm.
established the design and feel of the
Mhm.
characters. And me being new to the series, I just have to go back and make sure that everything, looks similar.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's like, oh, Karen doesn't look young enough here. So I have to
Mhm.
like, just kind of like squish her down and make sure like, okay,
Mhm.
she's just a little kid. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, but after I do all of that, I get to ink it, which is usually like my favorite part because you kind of could just like shut your brain down and you just go through. And then also everything looks so nice and pretty
Mhm.
once it's
Mhm.
inked because it's like, yes, it's done. And then after that, it's sent to a colorist, and they do a pretty amazing job with the colors. And it's the same colorist for like every book, so that also
Mhm.
helps keep everything consistent for the series. And
Mhm.
yeah, and that's it. So it's um it's more like it's very much more streamlined than
Mhm.
working on like an original book, especially an original book where you have to think of what's the feel of the world that you're working
Mhm.
in. Like for
Mm-hmm.
this, especially being one of the later artists, everything is kind of already figured out. So it's just up to you to make sure that it still feels the same. Not every artist is able to like duplicate art styles,
Mm-hmm.
but you can kind of make it similar. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think my art has like the same kind of feel as Katie's, but
Mm-hmm.
she's definitely much more detail oriented. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of am just, I don't know, the characters are just, they're just cute and squishy. But but I think they feel the same.
Yes, I do too. So I think that's actually a perfect segue to the other question I wanted to ask you about, which is you're kind of describing, you said that working on a licensed project is a little more streamlined because you've already got an established look that you're working from. But I was curious, what aspects of the project are you able to bring your own personal creativity to, or is there anything that, you can bring your own personal creativity to?
Yeah, there's definitely places, again, like with the panel thing, I could get
Mhm.
like a little bit, because there's places in the earlier books as well where you have much more looser panels depending on what's going on emotionally. So I think the way I panel is pretty similar to how I would panel for my own books. And also for me, I like really focusing on characters like expressions and stuff, and that bringing more of a little bit of an anime feel
Mhm.
to it.
Mhm.
So those places I'm able to express, and then it's still like interesting and changing like in the industry where there's more anime inspired art coming into graphic novels for
Mhm.
kids especially. But I feel like sometimes on the publisher's end they're still a little bit like, what's this exactly? And I'm like, no, it's cool, it's cool, it's fun. But it's fun because then also like I'll like draw some sparkles around Karen to like emphasize like, oh, she's like really hyped up right now. And then when I get the colors back, I'll see like the colorists even added more like
Mhm.
anime, like shoujo
Mhm.
sparkles with color to it. And I'm just like, oh, that's so awesome. Okay, we're on the same wavelength here. That's really cool. Yeah, so like places like that, I'm able to put a little bit of more of myself into the work.
Mhm. And well, one thing you mentioned, I was going to ask you about
Mhm.
whether there's anything you did differently than with this book than you would normally do for your own work. You mentioned that you had to do lettering at an earlier stage than you would otherwise. Is there anything
Yeah,
else that you had to do differently or any techniques you developed for this book or anything like that?
that's a good question. I'm like, I'm sure. Well, let's see. I guess for this book, it just pushed me more. Like I feel like each series I do, it pushes me more. Like with this one, there's a lot of different um scenes, places that Karen goes to. So, it kind of like challenged me more to be like, okay, I need to like come up with like an assembly hall building and all the auditoriums. Like I do a lot of school visits, so it was fun, like just taking pictures of different school auditoriums because I'm like, okay, Karen's going to be in a lot of school auditoriums I want to see because my school, at least my grade school, we didn't really have like an
Mhm.
auditorium. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so just, coming up with more environments and stuff, like that was a fun challenge, just kind of like adding to Karen's world and everything. Doing the lettering is definitely a little bit different. And also it just kind of like pushed me like with the programs that I use. Like I know I'm working on the next book 12, which is not the next book, but the book
Mhm.
after the next one that
Mhm.
comes out. It changed how I do like my work on the computer because usually I would do like everything in Clip Studio Paint, which a lot of artists really like, and is great for comics, especially just like an easy way to like make your panels and everything. But it doesn't play nice with Photoshop when it comes to text. Instead of like copying and pasting like my inks from one program to another, like I did finally concede and like, okay, I'm just gonna have to work in Photoshop after I pencil everything. And actually I realize I kind of enjoy it now.
Mm,
Yeah, so it has me like working on this book has me working in Photoshop again for like art on top of like having, better text tools to work with. I think that's something I might do more in the future because, it makes it easier when you're working with publishers because
mhm,
everybody, Photoshop files are just pretty
mhm,
much standard right now.
mhm,
And I also realized I enjoyed having like a full script done up.
mhm,
So I kind of want to keep doing that when I work on books for myself.
mhm,
Um, at least I say that now. Again, it always changes when I get to the book.
mhm,
Because again, like you hear different things from different artists. Some people like having scripts, some
mhm,
people like going straight into thumbnails. So
mhm,
I'm still like filling it out because when you're working with a publisher, you have to be able to have that back and forth with your editor as well and be able to show them like your full story instead of being like, well, it's in my head. You can't like
mhm,
see everything that's going on in the thumbnail, but I'm doing it as
mhm,
clear as I can.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah. So
That's
it's
super
definitely,
interesting. Can we
Mhm.
circle back to Photoshop again one more time? Because I think
Yeah.
curious. All the comics, not I shouldn't say all, but many comics creators that I talk to really love Clip Studio Paint, and that's their preferred software. So you saying that being forced to work in Photoshop actually made you fall in love with it again a little bit. So can you tell me more about what specifically in Photoshop you're really enjoying?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing my inking in Photoshop, mostly because I just have this brush and I don't know if I downloaded it beforehand or if it's just part of Photoshop because it is a Cal T. Webster brush and I know he did have work with Photoshop for quite a few years and I think he
Mhm,
just left recently, so it might
mhm,
just already be there. And it's one of their cartooning brushes, so it's kind of pixelated when you look at it up close. But that
mhm,
pixelation makes it so that when you zoom out, everything just looks way more crisp and cleaner than the default Photoshop brushes. Being able to just do that and not have to worry about how I'm going to export my text
mhm,
because Clip Studio, I don't know if like the newest versions changed it because I haven't gone to like the latest
mhm,
versions yet. But their text tools just aren't as intuitive. So
mhm,
I use my own handwritten font now.
mhm,
And sometimes I need to like adjust the spacing between like the words or just between the lines and stuff.
mhm.
And I can't do that in Clip Studio, but I can do it in Photoshop. You
Oh, you
know,
can't do it at all?
no, there's
Oh,
yeah, it's
ooh.
pretty basic, which I'm surprised. So that's why I'm like, I
Mhm,
don't know if they, because I know they have like a new version out,
mhm,
but they changed like their
mhm,
licensing prices. So I'm like, I'm just going to wait before I buy a new license for the new version. So I don't know if it's changed, but yeah, right now the version that I have, it doesn't, you can't really do like all of that. But
mhm,
you can make panels really easy. You can have like all sorts of different speech balloons. There's 3D models as well, which is something that I want to get into to see if that helps with
mhm,
speeding up my work, especially like if, making like 3D models of like bedrooms and
mhm.
buildings and stuff. Or I know a lot of artists use that, and so I'm like, you know what, I need to get to that, but I'm very much like, ooh, 3D, I don't understand.
Wow. Wait, so are you saying the 3D is, sorry, I missed this. Is it in Photoshop or is it in Clip Studio?
Clip Studio. There's a lot of good
Okay.
stuff in Clip Studio, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, but just because of working with the text and needing to like neaten everything out, it's just easier to do the inking there. And I thought I would hate it, but I don't hate it. I actually like it. And
Mhm.
again, the programs are very similar. So it's not like too big of a difference, but
Mhm.
it's just nice to know that I can, work in it because, it's another license that you have to like pay a subscription
Mhm.
for. So
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
feels good to get more use out of Photoshop versus just, going into it when I need to like fix up my text and stuff and send it to publishers. It's like, okay, I can actually like ink here too, and that's fine.
Definitely getting more use, more value from your hard-earned dollar.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's next for you? What are you gonna be doing after this?
So right now I am going to be working on my graphic memoir for first second, and it's a middle grade book. And it's pretty much going to be like baby's first crush mixed with how do you deal with peer pressure and like relationships and friendships wrapped in early 2000s anime and fan fiction online culture.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Thank you.